Hey, Gayla.
Hi, Colby. How you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for meeting with me.
I'm really happy to be here with you today. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we've got FILSAA's YouTube channel viewers who might be watching this interested in hearing some of the answers to questions like, can people with felony records apply to and get into law school? Would you introduce yourself for whoever might be watching, and then we'll get into it?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Gayla Jacobson. I'm the Executive Director of Admissions at CUNY School of Law. And I'm really excited to be having this conversation with you today because I think it's a really important topic. And you are a group of students that have a unique perspective on the law, experience with the law. And we're really excited to invite you to apply to law school.
First, then, let's just talk about one of FILSAA's goals is myth busting around this issue. I know when I was looking at law school, my first question was, is it even possible for me? And I searched on Google, can I get into law school with a record? Assuming the answer would be no. Why might have that always been the common misconception? Is it still true? Has it ever been true? And is it more possible now than ever for people to get into law school?
So I'll start with your last question. I think the answer is probably yes to that, that it is more possible now to get into law school than it ever has been. And I think the reason for that is there's just a sense of an awakening around the country. And so I'm speaking generally here about law schools, not specifically about CUNY. I think CUNY has always been a little bit different, and I'll get into that as well. But I think generally speaking, there's a myth, sort of unknown about law schools, right? Like the process is long and convoluted, and you don't really know what the admissions professionals or the faculty or anybody is thinking unless you have conversations with them, right? And those conversations can seem very scary to have, to approach somebody that you don't know who really holds the key to allowing you into law school, the gatekeeper, and say, like, this is a part of my life and I'm probably not proud of it, but maybe there are extenuating circumstances that led to these events happening. And probably that's what inspired you to really want to be able to make changes in the world. And so the reason that I say that it's probably easier now to get into law school than any other time is because people are really starting to understand that it's not equal for everyone, right? That's such a silly thing to say because it seems so obvious now, but to so many people for so long, it wasn't as obvious. And it wasn't as clear that somebody might not have the same opportunities in life, and that when you have choices that are in front of you, it's not always easy to make the choice that upholds the law, especially given circumstances that different people are put in. And so we need to really be understanding of what may have led people in order to make decisions in their lives, and how those decisions actually impact students in a positive way by giving them an opportunity to have interactions with the law that often are not good, right? These are interactions that people see as inspiration for wanting to change, for going, the system isn't broken. It was designed to keep me out, and I'm going to get in and make changes from the inside. Or the system isn't broken. It was designed to keep the powerful powerful. And how can we go about changing that? And not just reforming a system, but really transforming a system so that we make the kind of changes that give everyone an equal opportunity to have different experiences in life. And I think that's what a lot of schools are starting to see now. One of the things we're going to talk about is really being upfront on your application, making sure all the information is there. And so it's really important that you disclose everything, because it's not about what's happened in your past that can be problematic for the bar or for law schools. It's about being honest about it. And so we really want to make sure that the law school, being on your side and being really excited to have you be a student, has the ability to put forth the best application for you to the ABA, and to really support you as a student, and help you navigate that application process, because it will be a little bit more complicated for you.
So when I was going through the application process, I received a lot of rejections from schools. And then I know from being on the inside of CUNY now as a student, that your office does accept almost every year, at least since I've been around, formerly incarcerated students. Why might some schools still be hesitant to take that first step? And then, and you touched on this a little bit, but how is your office or other schools that are admitting formerly incarcerated students, how are they viewing those applicants now that might be different from schools who are doing it the way they've done it?
First, let's locate ourselves in the law, right? The law is in itself intrinsically racist and systemically problematic. You are talking about entering a very like good old boys profession that really elevates white men and especially white rich men. And so when you are a part of that system, it is a little bit daunting and a little bit overwhelming in that it's not really designed for people who have faced more struggles in life. In many ways, it doesn't support the underdog in a lot of ways. And so we need to first locate ourselves in that position before we start talking about the gatekeepers, because the gatekeepers are admissions professionals, which I have great respect for admissions professionals. I've worked at a few different schools and have, you know, traveled to recruit students with other admissions professionals. And as a whole, they are very progressive and inclusive and a very diverse group in among themselves. And so I think that there's a lot of changes that we're seeing as you're talking about in law schools across the country. But I think that there's also a mentality at some schools, mostly stemming from the mentality of the law field itself, that was and is undergoing a transformation, just like I think our whole country is at this point, just like we all are. It's an exciting time to be on the front of these sorts of changes. And, you know, you don't know who's going to be reading your application at different law schools. And so you don't know what their reasons are. You know, it doesn't come with a, we admitted you because X, Y, and Z, or we denied you because X, Y, and Z. It's just a yes or a no. And that's part of the mystery of it. And that's part of the frustration, I think, with it, is not really knowing why people are making the decisions they are. And knowing, you know, it's not as simple as being put into a computer algorithm and going, okay, you know, this person has the right X, Y, and Z or the wrong X, Y, and Z. These are real people that are reading your applications. And so sometimes people apply to schools that aren't good fits for them. So even if they have all the right or standard indicators, talking LSAT, GPA, great written personal statement, letters of recommendation that support the student, experience on their resume that it would indicate that they would be a great candidate, if it's not the right school for you, then it's possible that you would not be admitted anyway. There's really an important factor in law schools, which is fit. And that's an important factor in any school that you're going to attend. But really in law school, you're spending a lot of money and a lot of time, and you're really undergoing a transformation. You're going to change the way that you think about everything, and you're going to change the way that your brain actually physically functions. And so when you're undergoing that kind of transformation, it's really important to be in an environment that is well suited for your goals and your interests. And I think that CUNY always understood that, you know, we are a school that wants to support our communities. We're a school that wants to transform the kind of opportunities that we're allowing students or allowing people to have. And so when you have a school that's so focused on making sure that opportunities are available to everyone, we understand that going to those communities and finding the people who have been a part of those communities is really important in not just giving them the tools to lift up and support those communities, but also helping everyone who's in the school to have a greater understanding of what that might look like and how we can really approach the law and how we can approach supporting people and how the law needs to be transformed, the way it's being used for good and for evil in many ways. And so having a diverse community has always been incredibly important at CUNY Law, because we want to make sure that we are able to lift up, build from one another, and go back to the places that inspired us in the first place to go to law school and to be able to make those changes. And I think the very act of going to law school is an incredibly optimistic and hopeful standpoint. You know, you don't go to law school going, well, I can't change anything and nothing matters and I can't make a difference. You know, you go to law school because you go, wow, I see what's wrong. I've experienced it. I know how this goes poorly for people, and I'm going to make a difference. And so I think it is incredibly beautiful and optimistic of anybody to decide to go to law school, especially now with all the things that we see happening in the world, to go, I see all these problems, and there are a lot of them, and I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to go and I'm going to be a part of the change that I want to see. So I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. So after formerly incarcerated students have come to your school, I know a lot of them, just because of the way the timeline of their life has worked out, they're coming to law school later than a lot of traditional applicants. So they might be nervous about fitting in socially or academically or whatever with other students or with the faculty, or carrying around the stigma of, you know, their criminal convictions. How have you noticed that these students get along as students and as parts of their community once they get to law school?
A few years ago, we had a student who actually spoke at graduation. He was elected to speak at graduation, and he was a formerly incarcerated student. And he was asked to speak at graduation because he was probably the most loved student on campus when he was here. You know, he was like the mayor. He was talking to everybody. He knew every single person on campus, students, faculty, staff. He's just very well loved. And the thing about CUNY, and the thing that I think is really exciting, when our dean was interviewing for her position, she had been at CUNY Law as a professor and as an administrator for a long time. She loves us. She always has. And this was, you know, the ultimate, to become the dean of CUNY Law. And she said something about, you know, I'm going to make space for you not being the law school that I left, and you're going to make space for me not being the administrator or the faculty member or whoever it was when I left. And so I love that, because one of the things that I think is so important and that we talk about regularly in the admissions office is, if I today am the best version of myself right now, how sad for me. Because shouldn't I always be growing, and shouldn't I always be changing and striving for different, for more, for better, for learning, and for really educating myself? And so I think that, generally speaking, that philosophy is extended to everyone in our school, that like, your experiences have made you who you are and brought you here today. And we are really excited to learn with you and grow with you. And the experience that you have as a formerly incarcerated student is going to be unique in the classroom. It's going to be something that people can learn from. It's going to be something that people are going to rely on in some ways. And it is hard because it's not seen as something that's a positive in our society, right? But it can be really positive in a law school setting, as far as having that experience and knowing intimately the system and the ills of the system. And so many people that have that experience are drawn to the law because of that experience. So you might not be here if it weren't for being formerly incarcerated. And we're really excited that you're choosing the law and that you're choosing to change your life in a way that allows you to change other people's lives as well.
So I'd like to get to the nitty-gritty of the application process. Someone,
Sure.
let's say an applicant is formerly incarcerated, maybe has, you know, some other character and fitness type question boxes checked, like a substance abuse history or something like that. What are some ways they can present themselves to you, and some advice you might give them from their personal statements or other essays they submit to recommendation letters they seek out, and like how can they present that the full package of themselves as a viable candidate while also carefully disclosing the things that they need to disclose for someday applying to the bar?
Sure. So I love your question because it doesn't just focus on what the applicant needs to say in response to character and fitness. It really focuses on, what is the theme of this application and how can we present ourselves in a holistic way that allows us to put our best foot forward and really be considered as a viable candidate for law school. And so the first component, I think, you're going to have character and fitness questions and you're going to have to check yes to them. And they're going to require an explanation. And so it's really important that the explanation be very clear. It needs to be thorough, and it needs to be not just concise, but really think about like all the factors that come together. If there are, as you suggested, somebody might have substance abuse history and somebody may be formerly incarcerated, and those things may go together. And you may not have been incarcerated for drug charges, though you may have drug history. And so how do those sort of play on one another? They're not standalone, independent pieces of somebody's life. They often are part of a bigger picture of what we've been through, what we've experienced. And so making sure that you choose, first of all, the right method of delivery, I think is really important. So there are a few options. If you do check yes to any of the character and fitness questions, you have to write an addendum, of course. But you may also find that the theme of your personal statement is based on those. So if the theme of your personal statement is something that really thoroughly explains your story, because this is your story, this is not just the cut and dry facts, right? So you have the aspect that is your story and the aspect that is the facts. And so if your personal statement is really the story of your history with any of these issues, formerly incarcerated, substance abuse issues, anything, a history of arrests, anything that shows a pattern, you want to really be able to tell that story. So you have to decide, first of all, if that is the theme of your personal statement or if that belongs in an addendum, because you want to talk about something else in your personal statement. And so if that belongs in your addendum, then that's everything right there. You would want to give context, you would want to give dates and history, you would want to be thorough, and you would want to take responsibility for it, right? You don't want to say, well, these things all happened to me, but you do want to be able to point out sort of the causes of them in a way that still takes responsibility, right? So you would want to be able to say, I grew up in poverty, or I experienced systemic racism, or, the system was not really built for me. And that's the reason that I want to be able to make these changes. But they also led to the experiences that I had that are now drawing me to law school. So you have to decide if that's a small enough part of your application that you want it to be in the addendum, or if it's really the theme of your application, in which case it would go in your personal statement. If it is your personal statement, then you would want to use your addendum, which is still required, to be very cut and dry about all the charges or length of incarceration or anything that you need to include so that everybody has the full picture. But you don't need to be as thorough in explaining all the details in your addendum if you've really covered that topic in your personal statement, because we don't need to hear it twice, but we do need to hear it once. Because really what the committee is looking at is, are they going to be a good fit for the school? Are they really going to be able to contribute to the classroom in a way that, that other students may not be able to? And that maybe even professors may not be able to because of the experiences they've had. And as you mentioned, can we make a case for this person to pass the bar? And so what the admissions office and what the law school is doing is making sure that we're not going to take all your money and then not let you, not support you in actually becoming a lawyer by being a member of the bar. So it's actually really important and beneficial to you that we make sure that we have all the facts. If we don't have all the facts, I've seen this happen on the Misconduct and Irregularities Committee. If law schools don't have all the facts and then the bar uncovers things, that's problematic, because that's lying, that's hiding misinformation, all of that. But if you're upfront about the things that you've experienced in life and can show that, like, that's not a part of your life anymore, it has brought you to where you are. And so in that way, it's certainly a part of your life, but it's not going to be something that you fall back on. It's not going to be like, if you show a history of drug abuse or alcohol abuse, you want to be clear about the steps that you've made, or the steps that you've taken in order to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And that's because law school is stressful. That's not because we think people are going to fail. That's not because we think that, you know, somebody's history dictates their future. That's because we know that law school is really stressful, and we want to make sure that you're in an environment that's supportive of you, and that is going to be really productive and beneficial. Not something that's going to be stressful and triggering. So, because law school is triggering, I should just say, you know, a lot of people that have incarceration in their past have had experiences that can be triggered by things that you talk about, by cases that you see, and by conversations that you're going to have. And so being able to have the tools and able to that will enable you to be successful in law school is really important. So, you know, you want to make sure for yourself that you're in a place that you're ready for those stressors, that you're ready for one of the most stressful things that I think you can go through with law school, and really thrive and really grow and really be able to share those experiences that you had. And so other people can do great work and be more educated as well about how they can help people and help communities. So I think that's really key. You talked too about, or asked about, letters of recommendation. Those are huge because they can really support the story that you're saying, right? Your application sets forth the story of you, how you tell your story, how you view yourself, what your aspirations and goals and dreams are, and what led you to all of those. And so the letters of recommendation are really the only opportunity for us to have somebody outside of you corroborate what you're saying. And it's important to share with the recommenders your resume and potentially your personal statement or any addendums, just so that they know the story that you're trying to put forth and they know what you're telling the committee. And then they have the opportunity to really back you up and say, this person is resilient, or this person is motivated and passionate and dedicated. But I think that resilience is really becoming the thing that faculty and staff are looking for when they're reviewing your application. And what better way to show resilience than by being a formerly incarcerated person who wants to go to law school? I think that's, you know, kind of the ultimate showing of resilience. And because law school is so difficult, it's becoming more and more apparent that that is one of the major traits that we need to look for in applicants.
Great, that's really helpful. Okay, well, I think that's all my questions for you today. I think this has been some valuable insight into the process and how your office and hopefully other offices around the country are thinking about things. And for everybody watching, I hope that this has helped you shape your application and given you a little bit of hope that law school could be possible for you like it was for me. And if you have any other questions or need any help along the way, you can email us at filsa@mail.law.cuny.edu. We'll be glad to weigh in.
That's wonderful. And I love the really long email. But I do just want to add too that, you know, so often it feels overwhelming and daunting to contact admissions professionals or admissions offices around the country. But that's why we're there. You know, we're here to answer any questions that you have. And it really is important to talk to each school that you are thinking about applying to. And talking to the admissions office about their practices and their advice as far as completing some of the questions on their application, and also talking to the students and finding out what their experience is. So definitely contact Colby, definitely write FILSAA, definitely call admissions offices if you have questions. And we're really excited for this next stage in your life.